This is my take from podcast. If you want to listen summary of podcast, start with a free trial for detailed summaries on Apple Podcasts and Spotify using link in descriptions and support with tips on Patreon. Here is key point discussed in podcast, the forces behind Britain's downfall. Konstantin Kisin. It's interesting to see how the UK's immigration situation is being covered by us streamers and how it's being framed as this entire content niche. But what's really going on here? Konstantin Kisin makes a great point that the downfall of the UK is not necessarily a bad thing, but rather a sign of a recovery, as people are finally speaking out and demanding change. The fact that protests are peaceful is crucial, as it allows for a constructive conversation about the issues at hand. One of the key concerns is the issue of illegal immigration and how it's being fueled by the European Convention on Human Rights. Konstantin explains that until 2023, if someone came to the UK and applied for asylum, they weren't considered an illegal immigrant, even if their application was rejected. This has led to a massive influx of people coming to the UK, with over 55,000 people arriving every year. The numbers are staggering, and it's no wonder that people are getting frustrated. Konstantin shares an example of how, when he came to Britain, the number of legal immigrants was around 55,000 per year. Fast forward to today, and that number has skyrocketed. The problem is that the government is not addressing the concerns of the people, and instead is trying to keep the lid on the pressure cooker. The issue of immigration is complex, and it's not just about people coming to the UK for a better life. Konstantin explains that there's a difference between asylum seekers and economic migrants. Asylum seekers are fleeing persecution, while economic migrants are coming for a better life. The problem is that the UK is being incredibly generous to people who come illegally, providing them with hotels, food, and other benefits. The pull factor is real, and it's not just about the UK being a desirable destination. Konstantin explains that the UK is one of the most generous countries in the world when it comes to providing for illegal immigrants. The fact that people are being given phones, and in some cases, even being allowed to stay in the country despite committing crimes, is a major pull factor. The issue of immigration is not just about numbers, it's about the cultural fabric of the country. Konstantin explains that when people come from very disparate cultures, it can be difficult to assimilate them into British society. The numbers are just too high, and it's impossible to assimilate people that quickly. The UK is not a nation of immigrants, unlike the US. Konstantin explains that the UK has a very different history and culture when it comes to immigration. The US is a country of immigrants, and it's always been that way. The UK, on the other hand, has only recently experienced mass immigration, and it's been a major shock to the system. The issue of immigration is not just about the UK, it's a global problem. Konstantin explains that technology has made it easier for people to travel, and that's led to a massive influx of people seeking a better life. The problem is that the UK is not addressing the concerns of its people, and instead is trying to keep the lid on the pressure cooker. The media is also playing a role in shaping the narrative around immigration. Konstantin explains that the media is not allowing for a constructive conversation about the issues at hand. Instead, it's trying to silence people who are speaking out against immigration. The example of Ryland Clark is a great illustration of this. He made a comment about immigration, and it was blown out of proportion. The fact that he was heavily caveated in his comment, and yet still got in trouble, shows just how sensitive the issue is. The fact that 69% of Brits think that most illegal immigrants do not share the same values as them is a staggering statistic. It shows just how deep the concerns about immigration run. The issue of multiculturalism is also a major concern, with 89% of respondents in a Newsnight survey thinking that it has failed. The issue of immigration is complex, and it's not just about numbers, it's about the cultural fabric of the country. The UK needs to have a constructive conversation about the issues at hand, and it needs to address the concerns of its people. Otherwise, the pressure cooker is going to keep building, and it's going to lead to some serious consequences. It's not just about having people from different ethnic backgrounds living in the same country, it's about the idea that there's no such thing as a dominant culture or identity. And that's a problem because it can lead to a lack of cohesion and unity among people. People are feeling like their country is being eroded, that their values and way of life are being threatened. And it's not just about immigration, it's about the fact that the country is becoming poorer, that people's living standards are being eroded. It's about the fact that there are big challenges that need to be addressed, like the national debt and the deficit. And it's hard to address those challenges when everyone is pulling in different directions. If you bring in people from all over the world and they all buy into the values of the country, that's a strength. But if you just bring in people and don't encourage them to integrate, that's a weakness. And that's what's happening in the UK right now. He's not constrained by the same political correctness that might prevent others from speaking out. It's about the fact that there are real concerns about the impact of immigration on the country. And just because someone might not be able to articulate those concerns in the most articulate way, it doesn't mean that they're not valid. We need to be able to listen to each other and have respectful conversations about these issues, rather than just dismissing each other's opinions. It's like they're trying to create this perfect world, but they're not willing to deal with the consequences of their actions. Because when you're a parent, you have to deal with the reality of the world and make decisions that affect your child's life. You can't just idealize about how things should be, you have to deal with how they actually are. And it's not just about the ideologies, it's also about the culture. We're losing sight of what it means to be British and what it means to be proud of our country. It's not just about the flag, it's about what it represents. It's about being proud of our country and our culture. They're trying to say that our country is a piece of shit and that we should be ashamed of it. We need to be able to talk about the complexities of our culture and our history without being shouted down by the left. We need to be able to have a constructive conversation about what it means to be British and what it means to be proud of our country. You know, it's interesting to think about how the UK's migrant situation has played out over the last 2 decades, and how some people like Tommy Robinson were warning about these issues way back when. Now, it's not like he had some kind of crystal ball, but he did see what was happening in his town, in Luton. And he was like, this is the future of the rest of the country. And in a way, he was right. But what's also interesting is how the UK's approach to freedom of speech has changed over time. Like, Graham Linehan just got arrested at Heathrow Airport for 3 tweets about trans people. And it's not just him, 30 people a day are getting arrested for things they say online. And it's not just about the laws themselves, it's about how they're applied. Like Lucy Connolly got 30 months in prison for tweeting about burning migrant hotels, while Ricky Jones got off scot-free for saying similar things at a protest. It's like, what's the difference here? Is it just a matter of who's got a platform and who doesn't? And that's what's really scary. Because if you don't have a platform, you're basically at the mercy of the system. And it's not just about freedom of speech, it's about the fact that we're living in a society where the rules are constantly changing, and it's hard to keep up. And it's not just about the intent behind the words, it's about how they're perceived. And that's a really slippery slope, because who gets to decide what's offensive and what's not? And it's not just about the laws themselves, it's about the culture we're creating. It's like, what's next? Are we going to start arresting people for saying things that are just plain stupid? And that's the thing, most of the people who are getting arrested for hate speech aren't actually inciting violence, they're just saying stupid things. And that's not a good outcome, because it's not just about the people who are getting arrested, it's about the fact that we're creating a culture of fear and self-censorship. And that's not healthy for anyone. And it's not just about freedom of speech, it's about the fact that we're living in a society that's not working for a lot of people. We're just papering over the cracks with laws and regulations that don't actually solve anything. We need to start talking about the fact that we're not cohesive, and that we're not addressing the underlying issues that are driving these problems. And we need to start talking about the fact that we're creating a culture of fear and self-censorship, and that's not healthy for anyone. We all have these ideas about things, but then we do things that are counter to those ideas when it comes to our own self-interest. We're not just rational beings, we're also emotional and driven by our own desires. People get caught up in their own ideologies, and they don't want to listen to opposing viewpoints. But the truth is, most people's positions are not based on a deep understanding of the issues, but rather on how they feel about certain things. Take Gary's economics, for example. He's very good at identifying problems, but his solutions are often simplistic, and don't take into account the complexity of the issues. But what's really interesting is that when you look at the data, you see that inequality is a major problem in our society. And it's not just about the rich getting richer, it's about the fact that people's living standards are not improving. We're not creating enough wealth, and we're not incentivizing people to work hard and innovate. We need to be talking about how to create a more dynamic economy, how to incentivize people to work hard and innovate, and how to address the issue of inequality. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to see social tensions rise, and people become more and more disillusioned with the system. Because if we don't have those conversations, we're not going to be able to find solutions to these problems. We need to be having nuanced conversations about economics and politics, and we need to be willing to listen to opposing viewpoints. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to find solutions to these problems, and we're going to continue to see social tensions rise. It's like they've already won the election, so who are they going to beat up on now? The Democrats are already dead in a sense, so it's not as exciting to go after them. We can push people to get to the truth, like we did with Benjamin Netanyahu. That's what new media should be doing. But instead, it's frustrating to see it become just as superficial and focused on sensationalism as the legacy media. But instead, we're seeing a lot of content that's just not good for people. It's like fast food. It might be easy to consume, but it's not nourishing. We need to think about the impact of our content and strive to do better.